Welcome to From the Shed End with myself, T.Dot. Theo, how you doing?
Not bad, thanks. It's Friday. I've got my second coffee of the day alongside here, which I'm going to need to get through the rest of my work emails after this recording. Looking forward to the game tonight as well. Unusual to say that on a Friday.
Yep.
We usually don't really have much football to look forward to on a Friday. And hopefully we get the result and it puts us in a good mood for the rest of the weekend. How are you doing?
Yep. I'm good. Not bad. Like you, I've been ill this week. So, normally I'd have the Enzo Fernandez video would have been out by now. The Gusto video would have been out and all of those things. But I've just been ill and it's a weird illness because it's not really hit me or anything, or I've not been, it's just been like my throat and just being lethargic and all these weird things. So today's the first day that I've actually felt like well enough to do things and myself again. But apart from that, looking forward to the weekend. Obviously, like you just mentioned, big game coming up tonight as well. There's a lot to talk about throughout the next 45 minutes or so. So as always, before we do that, let's just say if you can and you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up as well. All of that stuff get interactive, and you can see a few comments already coming in. So we will be opening up the chance for people to jump on the stream as well, give their views. So again, thank you, Chris, as well. I think there, you'll definitely have your chance to say what you need to say about the transfers and the media's narrative and Chelsea Fulham. We'll get onto that at some point as well. Let's start with the big talking point, which I've just mentioned, and the fact that we have officially signed Enzo Fernandez, a player that we've both been talking about on here for what seems like months. But the deal got done at the final hour. It was bittersweet because at one point I thought it's not going to happen. And I know you want to talk about Jorginho as well, but talk to me about Enzo Fernandez. Good signing, wrong timing. Talk to me.
Really good signing, yeah. Like I said at the start of January, I thought it was one that would go right down to the wire, and I was right. A couple of hours, I think, before the 11 p.m. cutoff point. Credit to Todd Bowley and Egbali. I think they probably didn't have many hours of sleep in Lisbon with the negotiations. Rui Costa really seemed to stand his ground, and he didn't want any players in exchange. He wanted the full 107 million that he requested for the release clause. In terms of Enzo Fernandez, one of the most promising young players in world football, in my opinion. We saw that at the World Cup. 22 years old, which is the perfect age. 8.5-year contract, so we'll be having him until 2031. He's more of a defensive-minded player from what I've read, but he does have that technical ability to kind of offer his support to the attacking players and play a bit of a role of a playmaker. So I think it's exactly what we need now, because we know we've spoken so much about Jorginho maybe slowing the play down a little and not really being as creative. But I think Fernandez might be that player. We need a bit of drive, a bit of energy in the heart of our midfield. And we've spoken so many times as well about having that midfielder, whether it's going to be Rice, Bellingham, Fernandez to replace Jorginho, Kante, Kovacic in the long term. And it seems like we've got a man now. I think Bowley as well. As soon as he watched him in the World Cup back in December, he said, "This is the man I want." As soon as he left the pitch, I think in the World Cup final, I think that's when in his head he started maybe getting the paperwork done and negotiations. But yeah, I'm really pleased it happened. Obviously, it's a big fee, but I think it's 40 million in one go, and then I think smaller installments every year. So obviously, so we can spread that across in the books and meet the financial fair play regulations. But like I said, really pleased we got him. It felt like the one that would have been a successful window, but now it's been a really successful window, in my opinion, because of the addition of Enzo Fernandez.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, obviously, before the deal was done, there was always a small possibility that he was going to stay, and I know that Rui Costa was one of those people that wanted the player to stay. He didn't want him to go. Like you just said, literally the final hours of the transfer window was probably when this deal was finalized and done. There was so many sort of things that potentially were happening behind the scenes while the negotiations were happening. At one point, I read that he had a medical in Portugal. Then I read that he hadn't had it. There were still conversations, negotiations, and everything just seemed up in the air. And then I think at one point, the Fabrizio Romano tweet, the "Here we go" tweet was satisfying. But there's, if you remember back to, I think, Rafinha, and I think he gave us a "here we go" for him as well. So I still wasn't convinced it was happening until I saw David Ornstein give the green light, and that's when you can you can kind of, you know, sit back and enjoy the signing happening. But I think he's a brilliant player. You know, again, you look at other fan bases, they'll say that, you know, it's a lot of money to pay for someone who was only valued at 10 million, you know, 12 months ago, or less than 12 months ago. But, you know, the inflation is crazy in English football. The fact that he's been to a World Cup, he's a World Cup winner. He's played really well for his country, and helped him lift the World Cup. And if I'm honest, I mean, it's just the price you have to pay sometimes for these players. This could be a massive investment for the club. You know, the structure of the payment, it suits the club. It suits obviously Benfica, which is one of the things that they were holding out for, the correct structure. And you know, a lot of people will say that we've got him on a long-term deal, but again, if it works out well and he does well and performs well, then I don't see the problem in that. I think he's someone that we've been missing. We've neglected our midfield for so long. Needed to happen, and at any cost. And if it's 200 million, if that's what it takes to bring someone in of this caliber, this level, we've watched him at the World Cup. You know, some people have watched him for Benfica. Then so be it. You know, we just sometimes you have to bite the bullet. You know, Jack Grealish went for 100 million, but it doesn't. The scrutiny hasn't been given to Jack Grealish, so. I'm confused as to why there's a scrutiny around Enzo Fernandez, and the fact of his value rocketing through the ceiling. It's irrelevant. I mean, if he does it on the pitch, then no one's going to remember he's 100 million. He'll be recoup that fee on the pitch in no time, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like you said, you know, English football clubs, the prices are inflated at the moment. You looked at last summer, the prices, the extortionate prices that Liverpool and Manchester United paid for Darwin Nunez and for Anthony. And I think that just sets the bar now. And I think 80 million is the new 40 million, and 120 million is the new 80 million in a way. And I think it's going to be, and no one talks about price tags as soon as a player performs well. You look at Van Dijk, he went for, I think, 75 million from Southampton to Liverpool. No one talks about that price tag. He's performed so well. So fingers crossed, we won't be talking about his price tag anymore, because he will start to perform. And we're still unsure if he's got a feature tonight even. I think he just needs to get the paperwork needs to be completed before 4 p.m. to get his work permit. And if that's done, there's a chance he features in our midfield tonight.
I think he will. I think he's the press conference yesterday, Graham Potter kind of mentioned, you know, he'd be ready for the game if he can be, with the registration going through. I think he trained yesterday with the team as well for the first time. So, you know, and he's been relatively, I know he hasn't played much football in terms of, you know, starting games for Benfica, and he's sort of missed a couple of training sessions with them before he moved over to Chelsea. But I think at the end of the day, you know, he's a professional footballer. You know, he's not at the back end of his career. He's at the prime of his career. You know, he's going to, and we're almost forced to play him tonight. I think we're going to have to, and we're going to get onto Chelsea Fulham later, but we're going to be forced to play him because of the injuries to Kovacic in midfield, and obviously the loss of Jorginho. So we don't really have a choice in midfield if we can play him to play him, in my opinion. But I want to talk about Malo Gusto, another player that we signed. I feel like he's been overlooked a little bit because of Fernandez deal, and obviously we've loaned him back to Lyon as well. But quality player. Look at Pedro Porro, who we were linked with as well. You look at Hakimi a couple of years ago that we were linked with, and I feel like we've got the balance right in terms of that. You know, at the moment, I think you look at you know, Reece James, if we can keep him fit. You know, Gusto seems like the understudy to Reece James, and I think he's comfortable to play that position. Do you think that's the case, or do you think maybe, you know, Gusto does have the opportunity now to leapfrog Reece James to, you know, starting for Chelsea once he comes to the club next summer?
So there's always a chance that Gusto performs and leapfrogs Reece James and starts every game and cements himself in the first team. That being said, we haven't watched him play yet. Reece James does have those problems with injuries, so I think it'll be healthy competition for one and the other. Because you look at Azpilicueta now, I don't think he'll be here next season. I think in the summer, it's just for his sake and our sake, we need to cut ties with him. Unless he's happy to just be that face in the dressing room like John Terry was during the 2016-17 season under Antonio Conte. But I don't think Azpilicueta should be our second choice, maybe third choice, but not second choice anymore. And exciting player, really young. Obviously, it was part of the agreement that we'd loan him back to Lyon. It would have been ideal if we could have had him for the rest of the season, given Reece's track record of injuries. I'm almost sure that he'll pick up another injury before June. But really healthy competition for James. And player that I haven't really watched much of, but I'm excited. And clearly we got our man. He was the player we wanted, and looking forward to seeing him fit in the summer.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's, I agree with you about Aspie. I think Aspie, we know his time should have come to an end last season or the start of this season at least. But I think for me personally, I think if Reece James can't stay fit, I do feel that Malo Gusto is probably the player. Again, like you, I haven't watched much of him, but from what I've been told and reports that I've read about him, he's someone that will be able to come in and do a job. I like the fact Troy Chalobah has filled in that role more recently, and he looked very comfortable. But I think if you've got someone who's naturally equipped to play in that position, that right back position, or potentially even a right wing back position, if we play the back three with the centre backs, I think he has to come in and be able to straight into that team. And it is a shame that we've had to loan him back, because I feel like this season now, for me personally, isn't about trying to win the league or win the Champions League. If we win them, that's a bonus, or we make top four, it's a bonus to me. But I think this season is about embedding a lot of these new players that have coming in, and I think he's definitely got to be part of that. So for me, there's going to be a catch up for him over the next couple of weeks in the preseason window. He's got a lot of catching up to do in terms of where maybe Enzo Fernandez will be, Madueke, all these other players that we brought in, they might be slightly ahead of him in terms of how Graham Potter wants them to play in the system that we'll be playing as well. But let's talk some outgoings, because let's start with Jorginho, who it was reported, I think 2 or 3 days before the window was shut, that he was potentially looking at a move away from the club. Obviously, his contract talks had stalled before that, but to Arsenal, I think was a shocker for a lot of people. And I think for me personally, I've always said Jorginho on his day is a good player. He's obviously a world-class winner. He's won the World Cup. He's done all the things. He slows down a lot of play for me, and I think that was one of the things I've always said. He's one of these players that slows down the play, and I think the way that Graham Potter wants us to play going forward, he was going to be one of those players that we just couldn't carry to the next season. But give me your thoughts on Jorginho leaving, but also going to potentially next season could be a rival in Arsenal.
I'm not a fan of this move. I'm really not a fan of this move. I agree with you. He slows down play, and I think it was time for him to move on. I would have preferred had it been in the summer. I think he's still got a job. He still had a part to play at Chelsea in the next 6 months, especially that we're short on depth now in midfield. You look at the game that we have tonight, we may be forced to bring in Enzo Fernandez to play 2 days after we signed him. We would have only had maybe one training session with the first team, because we no longer have Jorginho. Kovacic is injured. Kante is injured. Dennis Zakaria is injured. So it kind of leaves us a bit short, and we're still competing in Europe. It's big kind of, and Jorginho has that European experience. He helped us win the Champions League. He could have had a part to play in those Dortmund ties that are coming up this month and next month. Hopefully the quarterfinals too. We're giving him to Arsenal, who I think who are on track to win the league. I hate to say it. It pains me to say it. And we're strengthening a team that are going to be, like you said, our rivals next season. It's a good age, to have that leadership figure in the dressing room at Arsenal, which is a very young side at the moment. I think Partey may be injured, and he might fit in and replace Partey alongside Xhaka.
I think Elneny's injured as well.
Elneny as well. You look at the last kind of players that we've let go to Arsenal: David Luiz, Willian. They haven't really worked out, and then they've ended elsewhere a year or two later. So that gives me a bit of hope that maybe he'll be back at Napoli or back in Brazil after maybe in 2 summers' time potentially. But yeah, I still think I would have liked to see him remain at Chelsea for the next 6 months and let him go for free to Barcelona or back to Serie A in the summer.
Yeah, I think I think it was one of those that Jorginho, we had to get rid of someone in this window. I don't think we could have gone into the window, especially with Enzo Fernandez coming in. And I think once those injuries back, the Kantes, Kovacic and Dennis Zakaria, I think you look at how overly stacked we are in that department. We talk about depth in a minute, but in terms of, we can bring that up now, actually. The amount of players that we will have in those positions, you look at where does he fit in that pecking order? You could easily say, I personally, I like the fact we've got depth in the squad now, but I think would Jorginho I read the other day Ampadu's got one of the highest passing averages in European football this season. So I think that realistically, the model that Graham Potter and Todd Bowley and everyone else at the club are trying to follow is bringing in, I think, youngsters, younger players, and Kante will potentially be next. I think if he gets a contract, it's only going to potentially be a year with the offer maybe of an extension, a year's extension. But I think he will be next. He's injury prone. Be 32, maybe 33 at that point. So I think that's the model that we're trying to go with, is to bring in, the likes of, Ampadu. I think has still got a role to do at club, whether it's off the pitch. I think he's one of those players that just never really got a look in. I've watched him in Serie A a couple of times, and he looks really good. Even in the Euros, I thought he impressed me as well. So, and the World Cup as well. There's times where I think he impressed me there. So I think the only thing that I have to question is, why would you strengthen someone who's clearly looking on track to win the league? That's the only thing that worries me about that, and the connection with Arsenal. But I think we've always done business with them. I think we don't have any problems with doing business with one team in North London. But I just think for him, Jorginho, it was a deal that keeps him in London, keeps him potentially the surroundings that he's used to, and he just maybe doesn't want that move to Italy just yet. Or it might not have been that it was on the cards. Maybe there wasn't a club that he wanted to go to that wasn't willing to sign him at this point for a fee. Maybe they did want to hold out to the summer, but Chelsea wanted to cash in and get some money, which is fair enough. Maybe it helped with the Fernandes deal. We just know. But I do think with Jorginho, it's probably the right time for him to move on. I think, he, like I said, I think he split the fan base, and I think a lot of players in that at the moment, which is unfortunate. But I think he's one of those that, for me personally, always slowed the game down and to be on the attack. And his first instance was either to pass sideways or pass it backwards to a centre back. And I think the way we're trying to get this ball, if that's what we're calling it, going forward, is to be, quick passing, get it forwards and get all into the channels and work them. And I think Jorginho just wasn't that type of player to do that. So I think it's a win-win, hopefully, with Fernandes coming in. We'll see. But I think he was going to go anyway. Let's be honest. He was going to go at the end of the summer. So we've got some money off it. And you think sometimes we let players go when really I think we've done the right thing. We've got some money off a deal that was eventually, like you said, in the summer was going to be a free transfer.
Fernandes was quick to pinch his number as well, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, I think his shirt was still warm, and Fernandes had snatched the number 5 off it and put it on his own. But another player that we're talking about is Hakim Ziyech, who looked like he was due a move at PSG. Now, I don't want to put anyone's blame out there, but it looks like it was a fault of Chelsea. The fact that the documents were sent over, emailed over. It sounds like a very Microsoft thing where you think the email's gone through and it's back, and it doesn't really tell you unless you check the Outlook outbox to see that you haven't actually sent your email. It sounds like that's kind of happened with the deal. It's a massive schoolboy error, I'm going to be honest. I think if you're talking about a transaction in terms of potential £1 million, I know it was a loan, but let's say it wasn't a loan. Imagine it was a sale. Imagine we were buying someone, whatever the case is. It's a massive balls up to do, man. But what do you think about Hakim Ziyech? I mean, he's obviously still at the club now. He's back in training. Graham Potter said that he's ready to play if he needs to. What's your thoughts on Hakim Ziyech, and where does he go from here now? Does he just need to get his head down and hopefully get a move in the summer?
Yeah, I think it was our previous recording, episode 79. We said after the Liverpool game that either he's playing particularly well in the last 2 games because he wants to impress Potter and he wants to stay at Chelsea and wants to play a part for the rest of the season, or because he's looking to play for a move away from the club. And I think it's clearly now that move to PSG, or that move that fell through, it's proved that it's the second option. He was playing for a move away from Chelsea. I do feel maybe that's that Hakimi Ziyech connection maybe persuaded him to go to Paris Saint-Germain. I think it's a schoolboy error from Chelsea, like you said, technical glitch, as they called it, or not having sent the correct paperwork 3 times in a row. You just don't make that mistake. you really don't make that mistake. And maybe, I don't know if all their attention was on Enzo Fernandez and they weren't really paying attention to sending the correct documentation to Paris. But it's silly. Ziyech was left in with egg on his face in Paris, probably. He had to fly back the next day. He probably wore the Paris training kits in the medical room.
Yeah.
It's silly. And then it reminds me of the De Gea move to Real Madrid when the fax machine didn't work. Yeah. But then I'm also thinking maybe this is just a bit of a theory, but maybe he traveled to Paris behind the club's back, potentially, a bit Odom Wingy style back in 2012. Yeah. And maybe Chelsea purposely didn't send the paperwork. I don't know if that Chelsea would do that if they're as immature as that. But I think we don't know the truth behind this. But yeah, it's silly. He was smiling in training yesterday, and Potter confirmed that he'll be available for selection for tonight's game. I don't think it's correct for him to start. He might not still be in the right frame of mind, but definitely a player that still can play a part in our squad, and hopefully he has the correct attitude now and for the next 6 months, and just gives it his all for the team and the badge.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's a balls up. Let's be honest. I think he's someone that's never really fully committed to the club anyway, and I think he's always had a disengagement with not just the club, with the fans, and you can see that there's been things that's happened behind the scenes that have almost spilled out onto the pitch. And body language is a massive thing in football. You can tell when a player wants to play for a club, or he's unhappy, or something's gone on. So I don't think he's ever been fully committed at Chelsea anyway. Yeah. And if I'm honest, I think it would have been the best move for him to go to PSG, to get away from the club, even on a loan deal with option. I think that was one of the things as well. There was, I think PSG wanted an option to buy in the clause, and I don't think Chelsea were keen on that.
No.
I might have got that wrong, but just in terms of Hakim Ziyech, I think he has to. For me, he still plays for Chelsea. He's still got to put the shirt on. He's still got to play for the badge, in my opinion. And I mean, I always question someone who doesn't want to commit to the team, to the squad. Should he be in the team? And I still think 100% yes, because sometimes that in an average job, if you worked in a supermarket or you worked in you couldn't just one day, because you're not happy, you just not turn up or not put in a shift. I think you're getting paid to do a job, and I think you've got to go into that with that mentality of, regardless of wanting to move away, it hasn't happened. You've got to put that to one side now and get on, and hopefully that deal can materialize in the summer, for me personally. But I think, yeah, it's sad for him, because I think, like I said, perfect move. It would have made sense for him to go. I do think he's going to be used in the squad. I do. I think he has to be. I think before the sort of transfer window was shut, he was one of the players that you could see that was something he was trying to do to get the ball in the box. And he has got quality. I think we forget how good Hakim Ziyech was before he came to Chelsea. He played for Ajax, and the game at Stamford Bridge where he just tore us apart, so almost like single-handedly. So he's a quality player, and I think the criticism for me that I give him is because of the body language, the
attitude.
50% that he gives when he can give 100% on the game. He doesn't always give you that. He'll give you 50. He'll give you a good ball into the box. He doesn't do it consistently enough throughout that game, or back-to-back games, or just a consistent run of games. You never see that from him. So I think he's got to do it more, and there's still a chance for him to still stay at the club. But he's got to play for the badge. As simple as that.
Let's remember who his best mate was last season as well.
Yeah,
Mr. Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah,
and I think the two of them are quite similar with their egos and their body language and their attitude. I think I shared it with you yesterday, but Hakim Ziyech hasn't posted a single related Chelsea post on Instagram since July 2022.
Yeah.
So I think this season his mind's not with Chelsea. He's not committed to Chelsea. But like you said, you're under contract by the club. You still have to turn up to work. You still have to do the job. You still have to act professional. And that's now what he has to do for the next 6 months. And then hopefully he gets his move to Paris in the summer.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to go into this because I can see Chris is putting a few in here. So Enzo's criticism now, because he's a Chelsea player, that's the way it is. Hasn't even stepped foot on the pitch as a Chelsea player, yet people are saying he's overrated. Shocking opinions. I agree with that 100%.
Jealousy. It's jealousy.
It is jealousy. I mean, it's definite jealousy. Outgoings: Aubameyang, Loftus-Cheek, Azpilicueta, possibly Mendy, Ziyech, likely, Pulisic. You could add a couple more onto that list. Callum Hudson-Odoi.
I think Kovacic was mentioned on that list yesterday.
Yeah, Conor Gallagher. I think there's a couple that potentially just to balance out the book slightly, which we're going to talk about now in terms of the financial fair play. And sorry, Chris, yeah, we are going to put the link in this chat very soon, so make sure you stay on so we can get your views as well. So I haven't forgotten about that. But just in terms of financial fair play, as you mentioned at the start, in terms of the Enzo Fernandez deal, 40 million up front with the installments. This isn't something new. I think let's just say that, because there's a lot of clubs up and down the country that do this. I think it's just magnified one because of the fee, because it's Chelsea as well. Let's be honest. Because I mean, we were going into administration, not too long ago. Apparently, we couldn't even get an airplane into the sky. We were struggling to get. Couldn't sell match day tickets. Let's remember, a lot of people thought we were going into administration, and we were Banter FC at one point. But financial fair play is something that's obviously been around, and there are loopholes that you can use to get around it, which we're not just the first club. Man City have done it before. You look at PSG, all these things. I do think we have to be careful, because we run the risk, especially if we don't get Champions League. I think that is a massive factor for next season's financial fair. So if we were to get a transfer ban, which is one of the things that I think has been batted around, if we don't make Champions League, it has an impact on financial fair play. If we were to get a transfer ban, in my opinion, and I'm going to ask yours now, but in my opinion, I don't think it would matter that much, because we've been able to secure a lot of the deals I think we were going to try and get done in the summer in this window. But what's your thoughts on financial fair play and the fact that we kind of loopholed our way through it, and we seem to be at the other end of it now, but there is still that risk of the ban?
Yeah, I think, like you said, because it's Chelsea, because of these big fees that we're paying, huge release clauses, maybe as well because we have a new American owner, people seem to be paying a lot more attention to Chelsea. But let's not forget that Man City were, they breached financial fair play regulations, Paris as well, and they didn't get bans. They never got bans. I think only Atletico Madrid got a ban recently. I can't remember if that was FFP related. But like you said, I think there maybe is still a chance we get a ban in the near future, and I feel like we have assembled a very decent squad needed with a lot of depth, like we just showed on the screen before. And let's not forget, the only thing missing now is that number 9, and it seems like we've already agreed the deal for our number 9 in the summer in Cuckoo, and a lot of talented youngsters. We've still got Levi Colville, we've still got Lewis Hall, who's improving every game. I don't want to jinx it, but I do think we've got a decent squad should we need to go into a transfer ban. But let's try not to think about that for now. Let's hope that Bowley's done everything that he needs to, avoid the repercussions and, respect those loopholes. But yeah, looking at that squad now, obviously you've got the two loanees and Dennis Zakaria and João Felix, and maybe if we do get a transfer ban, we can still maybe sign those players like we did with Kovacic back in 2019, I believe. But yeah, it's a lot of depth in that squad for sure.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, because I was thinking, I think João Felix is definitely staying at the club. I've resigned to the fact that I don't think he wants to go back. So I think we keep him. I think we're going to keep him. I think there'll be some. Because you're right, I think it was Kovacic, wasn't it, from the previous ban, who was able to sign him. And I think Dennis Zakaria is a tough one, because I think we do need that depth you've just mentioned around losing Jorginho. We don't know what Kante is going to be like when he is fully fit next season. So I think he'd be a good squad player to keep in the team. But I also do think Ethan Ampadu, I would like to see him. I would like to give him a chance. I don't think he's ever really had a real run. Yeah, I don't think he's had a run of games, or at least half a season at Chelsea where he's been able to cement himself. It's like Trevor Chalobah has. Lewis Hall's having it now. To see what he can do in the squad. I think he's such a really good, versatile player, and he's someone that we do need in the squad. And if he can do the job that Dennis Zakaria has been doing for us this season, we can kind of afford to let him back to get him out of the club and keep Ethan Ampadu at the club. I still think we should have kept Billy Gilmore, but that's a conversation for another day. Let's move on. We'll keep it linked to that. We're still talking new signings, but let's talk about UEFA Champions League. which is coming back very soon, which seems like it's been a while. I think you're going to the away fixture,
Yeah.
home and away, I think, but the away fixture, Dortmund, very jealous. It's a ground I still haven't been to yet. But before we get on to, we're not going to talk too much about the game, but just in terms of the registration of the players, obviously we were able to register three players into the squad, and also, which was mentioned after the window shut, around the category B list of players that we can include. Now, a lot of those, you look at Mudryk, I think, who falls in there. Madueke, I would assume, would fall into that as well. Even João Felix was one of the names that was asked to Graham Potter yesterday. Is he in contention to be in the squad? So I think we should be able to fit pretty much all the new signings into a list of Champions League players. I think. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't know about the category B as such. I'll put my hands up. I had to read into it, but it's a good loophole to have. It's not a loophole. It's there for anyone to use. It should surely give us a good opportunity to go on and do well in the Champions League.
Yeah, I think we both watched the same Sky Sports news video where he kind of lists the rules, and talking about that category B players, which I think who are under 22, I think signed their birthdays before the 4th of January, something along those lines. But if that's the case, then we can get Badiashile, Mudryk, Madueke, Fofana, I think, even into that category B. And then I think we should be able to register another 3. And let's not forget we've a spot's freed out now with Jorginho. I still don't know maybe if we're going to keep players like Pulisic, Kante in the Champions League squad. We don't know really when they're going to be fit again. But I think it's a great loophole, like you said, to have, and it gives us a huge opportunity to kind of add all this quality and depth to our Champions League squad, especially going into those Dortmund fixtures, having players back from injuries, adding players to the squad. I think I'm a lot more confident going into those games now than I was maybe back in November or December.
Yeah, and I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if you go on a run in the Champions League and actually go on to win it. I mean, that's more realistic, I think, than trying to get top 4. And the reason I say that is because I think sometimes we just turn up in European games, we just somehow flick a switch and we can perform. And I'm expecting more Champions League than I am in the league this season, which is really weird. I think I'm just resigned to the fact that we're so far down. I think we're 10 points off top 4 at the moment. If we lose tonight, then it's, you're talking, it's almost an impossible task to get top 4. So I think if we do get top 4, then it's a bonus to me. I don't see it I don't see this season now as we've got to get top 4. I really don't. So I think if we can do something in the Champions League, which I think potentially we can do. I mean, Dortmund are a really good team, but you look at the signings in the players you just mentioned, having those in, having Reece James, having Ben Chilwell back, Raheem Sterling, even utilising still Christian Pulisic when he's back, Enzo Fernandez into a team. I think this is where I'm sort of putting my hope into the season is the Champions League, because I think we have shown before that we've come up against massive tests. You think back to the last time we won it as well, how many obstacles we had to overcome to get there, to get to the final, to even beat Man City at the time, bearing in mind we were the underdogs in that final. I think it's a really good opportunity for us to at least get something out of the season. And we're out of 2 domestic trophies. Like I said, top 4 doesn't really seem appealing at the moment. So I think we have to focus attention on that Champions League, in my opinion. I don't know what you think, if you agree or you disagree.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. We've seen us go on crazy Champions League runs in crazy seasons where everything seems to have gone wrong throughout the season. Crazier things have happened at Chelsea Football Club. It's only 7 more games if we were to win it. 7 more games of football. Arguably, that's on paper, that's not a lot of games compared to, if you want to win the Premier League. That's why a lot of players say that winning the Premier League is harder than winning the Champions League at times. But yeah, and I think I know someone who may have put a bet as well that we're going to win the Champions League, if I'm not mistaken.
Someone had to do it.
Someone had to do it. And I think I might follow that person as well. Just it's always worth a little tenner. You never know.
Yeah. I think we've got every chance. With the Champions League, it's anyone's. Who wants it more? Who turns up on the night? you know, you have to
Exactly.
factor in injuries and all that stuff as well. But I just think, you know, we've had some you look at the 2 times we've won Champions League and some of the obstacles we had to going back to even when Roberto Di Matteo was in charge and the Barcelona night and just things like, I mean, we went through a lot in both of those, even the final, you know, penalty shootout. So yeah, I mean, I can see us going far in that, but let's turn our attention to tonight's game. Big game. I say this every single time we record. It's a must win if we are to try and salvage anything from this season. But we go into this game almost, you know, a replica of the last game, really, Craven not too long ago. But give me your thoughts. Chelsea versus Fulham, 8 o'clock kickoff, Stamford Bridge. I think you'll go into the game as well. But what's going into the game?
Yeah, it's all, like I said, I think on the last pod, we've got a kind of this feel good vibe about the club, the players and the mood at Chelsea Football Club at the moment. I do feel we've strengthened a lot since the last time we played Fulham, which was only, I think, 2 weeks ago now. Yeah. You look at the team that started against Fulham, there was no Badiashile in that. There was no Mudryk. There was no Madueke. And I think those are 3 players that will play a part tonight, particularly Mudryk.
Just about to do you a favour.
Get the lineups.
There we go.
Yeah, so this is my predicted lineup. I've gone with the same back four that played against Liverpool last weekend, or 2 weekends ago, should I say. Kepa stays in goal, obviously. Like I mentioned before, given the lack of kind of depth we have in midfield at the moment with Jorginho's transfer exit, Kante and Kovacic and Zakaria's injuries, I think Fernandes has got to start. I think it's the game for him to start. It is always a bit tricky throwing a player into the lineup after, you know, we've just signed him. We saw how that worked with Saul when we signed him on loan from Atletico last season. Even João Felix in the reverse fixture against Fulham, he was brilliant, but then he literally saw red and he had that moment of madness. Loftus-Cheek, I think it's a toss between Loftus-Cheek and Chukwuemeka, but I'm going to go with Loftus-Cheek just because he's a bit more of a bully and that experience. And then Mount, Mudryk, Madueke, and Havertz. And the one that I'm really looking forward to seeing is Mudryk. We saw his cameo against Liverpool, how promising and exciting that was. It's almost like every time he had the ball, it was someone had released a German Shepherd off a leash in a way, and he just was running down the wing. Yeah. So really excited to see him today, and I think that's, if we are going to win, I think that's the player that may make a difference. I'm actually expecting a goal on his Stamford Bridge debut tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I like this lineup. I think before we came online, we spoke about, you know, the midfield and how we might need to be forced to use Fernandes. And I agree with you 100%. I don't think if we're going to win this game or at least get something out of it, I think we have to Fernandes. And, you know, ideally, you wouldn't want to throw someone who's probably trained once with the team, you know, new to the whole surroundings of the league, the climate, whatever it is. You wouldn't want to throw him straight into a game. You know, you want him for the bench. And I think, like I said to you before, I remember, you know, all our recent signings going back to even Cucurella, even under Thomas Tuchel, you know, never, you know, they always gone, and you try and just phase them into a team, into a game. You know, Badiashile start on his debut. He sort of just was given a bit of time to embed into the team. But I think needs must. You know, I think we still have to evaluate where we are in the season. You know, we're 10th, like I said, we're 10 points, I think, off top 4. I know there was obviously, we were talking a couple of games ago about potentially, you know, relegation and things like that. And I think we still have to look at the teams behind us. I think we do, you know, because there's going to be a lot of teams now this part of the season that will just want to try and pick up points wherever they can. And there's going to be some crazy results, I think, especially bottom end of the table. We just don't want to be sucked into that sort of, you know, 15th or 16th, but you just don't want to be there come, you know, April, May. You just don't want to be there. So the higher up the table we are, the better. And I agree, you know, obviously you see my lineup, but I agree pretty much mostly with the lineup. And you know, on hindsight, I agree with you as well with Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I think he's got the experience in that midfield, and you need someone who's just used to the Premier League a little bit more, especially with Fernandes coming in, albeit for the price tag or whatever. But on his debut, you want someone a bit more cooler-headed, a bit more experienced, level-headed, maybe just alongside him as well. I saw a couple online where I think they had Conor Gallagher next to him, and I just thought, hey, it's a recipe for disaster. Playing him there, I love the player, but I just think having Conor Gallagher in a double pivot with Enzo Fernandez on his debut, you're asking for a lot of trouble. My line isn't that much different to yours, to be fair. And I know I've always said about Aspilicueta and his legs being finished, but I think this is a game he came on against, I think it was Liverpool. One of the games. It's been that that long since we played the game. I can't remember, but I think it was Liverpool. He saw the game out, and he done okay. He done all right. I was impressed with him, and I think I mean, the other option is Chalobah, but I just think for this game and how we played against Fulham last time, I think we should have Aspilicueta again with that experience in that back line. I think we're going to need it more so than ever in tonight's game as well. Like you've kept pretty much the same back line apart from Aspilicueta. I've gone for Carney Chukwuemeka in midfield. Like I know I've just said about Ruben Loftus-Cheek, but I just think coming back from the injury that he has, I don't really want to see, I don't want to see Reece James on the pitch tonight. I don't want to see Chilwell. I think Raheem Sterling might be back in contention as well. I don't want to see any of them. I don't want to see any of those players playing as little, unless there's a need for these players to come on the pitch. I don't want to see them on there. So I've gone for Carney Chukwuemeka, who I've been impressed with. I think he's been a really good player. He's joined the club and he's filled in different various roles. Like we've both mentioned, Fernandes has to start the game for me. I don't think there's any other option but to start Enzo Fernandes tonight. And I've gone with Hakim Ziyech. I think you had Madueke there, but I've gone for Ziyech only because, again, I've gone for the experience. And I think I'd like to see Madueke come on, throughout the game. I think he's someone that I think we do need to integrate into the squad. And I think if we can play Ziyech, and this would be a massive test for him as well, for Hakim Ziyech. If he comes on and you can see him putting in a blinder, well, it tells you that he definitely wants to move away from the club, or he wants to play for the badge. So either way, I'm happy because he's putting in a 9 out of 10 performance. But like you, I think Mudryk is looking forward to watching tonight. I just thought the cameo that he did against Liverpool was brilliant. And I think he has to again start today, even above, Raheem Sterling, who I feel might get the nod, above maybe Mudryk. But I just can't see how you can leave him out after that cameo performance against Liverpool. My only worry tonight is Kai Havertz. It really is. And he's actually shut me up the last couple of games because he's played really well. But I just think you don't know what Kai Havertz you're going to get. And you're either going to get the one who needs the 10 attempts to score a goal, or you're going to get the one who makes brilliant run and takes his chances, but he's just a bit unlucky. But with Hakim Ziyech and Mudryk on both sides of him, I can't. Again, this will be a test for Kai Havertz. And this is one of those times now, I think, with this squad now, there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide in this squad anymore. Before, you could potentially, we haven't had a window, but there's players in all areas of the pitch now, maybe apart from the number 9 at the moment, that are willing to step up to the plate and take your position at the team. So next season, you can't hide. You have to be on, a 9 out of 10 or whatever throughout. So I do want to see, Madueke come on. I want to see Raheem Sterling, potentially if we do need to. But Reece James, Ben Chilwell should not be anywhere near the squad tonight. Or I don't think we should be. I think we need to give Reece James more so the time to recover properly. I don't even want to see him on the bench, if I'm honest, but I think he will be.
Yeah, I think Potter mentioned yesterday in his press conference that Sterling, Loftus-Cheek, I can't remember if Loftus-Cheek was included, but it was Sterling, Ben Chilwell and Reece James, they're back in the team, but they're not 90 minutes ready. So I think that probably means that they'll probably get 15, 20 minutes off the bench, but even that will probably... It might be pushing it with Reece James, but I think we'll learn from a mistake.
We have to do a Reece James roulette again and see what minute in the second half he's going to snap his Achilles or whatever again. But I think we've got to win. We've got to get 3 points. I think it's a must. It's a must for us to do that. I think, like I said, Graham Potter's being backed now. He's been given players that he's potentially wanted in, or the club have said you've got to work with this caliber of players. The excuses can't keep carrying on. If we get these things back now, we've got to at least put in good performances and string back-to-back performances of wins, back-to-back wins together, as much as we can in the season now, I think. But give me your prediction for the game. I think it's I don't think any of us have really been right this season. I can't
No,
remember.
I don't think we've got a single one right so far.
Sums up the season pretty much.
I think I mentioned it on someone's Instagram reply, so I'll stick with what I said there. But I said 2-1 Chelsea. Like I said, I think Mudryk starting may make a difference. It may give us that bit more creative edge. It may give Havertz a bit more, putting balls on the plate for him. I spoke about Enzo Fernandez as well, being able to support the attacking players. So I think that may make a difference, and I think we'll be able to get a couple goals, 2 goals, and I think the home support as well will help. Like I said, it's this feel-good mood around Stamford Bridge at the moment again. So I think, the home crowd should be able to carry the players and the team to get a 3 points. I'm going to stick with 2-1.
Yeah, that's been my go-to this season, so I'm going to stick with it. I do think it's going to be a tough game, but I think the fact that we're at Stamford Bridge, I think a home fixture, the buzz that apparently has been around the club over the last couple of days, and I think we haven't mentioned it, but I think there's been some sort of bonding session. To what extent that means, or I don't want to dress it up to what it's not, but in terms of group activities with the team obviously not playing in the FA Cup last weekend, it's given Graham Potter the time to actually work on things on the training ground as well. So I think 2-1, I think a really good game, but I'm expecting, as I said, Mudryk, if it is Hakim Ziyech or Madueke, whoever on the other side, to supply that ball into Kai Havertz, and Kai Havertz to know what to do with it as well. But I'm going to bring Chris in because Chris is just...
I was just going to say, we know who's scoring for Fulham as well, don't we?
Yeah, put money on that. If you're a betting person, put some money on
Willian.
Mr. Willian to score. Chris, are you there with us? Can you hear us?
Yeah, what's going on, lads? How are we?
I'm not too bad. How you doing?
Thanks.
Well, I think the last time we spoke, lads, it was after the Fulham game where I came on and obviously was talking about Potter. I mean, I can't even think about what much has happened there. Chelsea's been very quiet in the window, isn't they? They've not really signed that much players, obviously. Look, as you say, there's no time for excuses anymore. There's no time for excuses. It's all about getting performances now and obviously results. People kept bashing Potter with he's not been backed. Well, I'm sorry, he's been backed. He's been backed now, and there's no excuses now. Yeah, in terms of the signings we've made, Enzo Fernandez was a must. He was a must. Quality player. Was one of Argentina's best players, if not his best player. I mean, people will say Messi, but outside of Messi, I mean, you're looking at Enzo Fernandez for me. You've got Mudryk, who obviously we've seen his little cameo against Liverpool, done well. We've got Joao Felix, who's obviously now got the suspension still, but we've seen his little cameo against Fulham. So for me, yeah, we've got players there that can step in and do a job. In terms of what I will say is this, right? I'll say this. We, as Chelsea fans, we all know we won't ever get any praise. We won't get any respect even. We do something well, we won't get any praise. What I will say is people will say they're not jealous of Chelsea, but if they weren't jealous of Chelsea, they wouldn't be mentioning Chelsea every 5 minutes, and that's a fact. Yeah, I see Klopp in his presser today, crying as per. I see Pep was talking about, we don't talk about teams spending money. Mate, people can say Chelsea's 10th now. Yeah, we're 10th now. Now we're 10th. Next season, different story, and people know that. People are delusional if they think that Chelsea will not be in a far better position than next season. So it's all about next season. I know people will say you can't really say it's a write-off in terms of Premier League, but I think this extreme case of where we're sitting now, the transition from Roman Abramovich to Todd Bowley and Clear Lake Capital, I think you can probably say it as a write-off. All focus should be on the Champions League. I think that's the only way we're going to get Champions League football next season. And if we don't get Champions League, I would want to see Chelsea finish 10th, because you know what? One game a week, mate, I'm all for that, because I think people forget the last time we finished 10th, we won the league the next season. So
exactly.
I'm all for it. I'm all for one game a week. Obviously the domestic cups you've got as well. And in terms of the Champions League this season, it would not surprise me if we won it. I'm not saying we will, but it would not surprise me if we won it, guys. So, I think the media narrative is a bit shambolic. But you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. And we've all seen it. We've seen it from when Roman bought the club. We're now seeing it when Todd's bought the club. We've spent money. We've bought big money. And people are now going to be... They've seen it before, right? 20 years of success, clubs would love what we've done, success after success after success. And it's not as if we've just done it for 5 years. We've done it for 20 years, and we're here to stay. And now people can use this season. People seem to think this season's the only season to exist in football. But what I will say is this: a team that's 10th can sign top quality targets, their main targets, while a team at first have to settle for Jorginho and Trossard when they wanted Mudryk and Caicedo. So we can get our targets. Some other clubs don't have the pool, mate. So for me, tonight's game, I expect nothing more than a win. I know Fulham's been on, they're above us. Wow, when's the parade? But for me, I expect nothing more than a win, guys. So I'm going to say 2-0. I'm going to say, Mudryk. I think he should start. I think I'll say Mudryk and, why not? Enzo Fernandez to score. Why not?
I like the ambition. What would your lineup be, Chris? Who would you go with as, say, a right back? Because obviously me and Theo, I've gone for Azpilicueta. Theo's gone for Trevor Chalobah. Would you risk Reece James in a game where I think I'm not saying he needs a result tonight, but I think there's going to be, like you've just said, the scrutiny, the media scrutiny is always going to be about where you've spent X amount in this window. We still expect you to get top 4, which is what the narrative is in the media. But who would you go with as a right back or those positions? Would you start Hakim Ziyech as well?
Well, in terms of right back, I know Reece James might think he's fit, but he also said that as well, and he got injured. Obviously, that's not the player's fault. I wouldn't risk him for this game. It's give him that extra week's rest. Give him that extra time. No, I wouldn't play him. Probably look at Azpilicueta. I know I've said that. It's probably the best time for him to go. At the same time, he's still there. He's still there to be used, and I think it's more sensible than reliable option to pick. In terms of Ziyech, this guy's frustrating me. Right? By the way, I wanted Ziyech when he came from Ajax. I was like, yes. We've got a quality player here. He is a quality player. He's not a bad player. He's a very, very good player, because you can see it with Morocco. But as Seski Time said, by the way, good name, quality name there. So as he said there, right, he's not posted anything Chelsea related since, July? Yeah. So you've got Felix, who's been here, not even a month, or coming up to a month, and he shows more care for the Chelsea badge than what Ziyech does. And so does Zakaria, by the way. And obviously, he's only been here on loan. So it seems to be the loan players are showing more care and consideration for the club than what majority of the first team do. But yeah, for me, Ziyech, I don't know. I mean, he's been okay recent games, but it's like the guy doesn't want to be here. So I wouldn't play him. I wouldn't play him personally. I mean, I know he's there to be used, but it's the same with Pulisic. Like, the guy can clearly do it. When you see him for the US national team, you see him for Chelsea, and where's the performances? So yeah, I wouldn't risk Reece James. My lineup would probably be Kepa, who's Azpilicueta, Silva, Badashile. I would still keep with Badashile. I mean, people say Koulibaly. Badashile's been very, very good for the 2 games he's played. Left back Cucurella, midfield Enzo. Wow. I mean, it's Enzo Gallagher, but then it doesn't excite me. That doesn't excite me, Gallagher. Enzo Chukwuemeka, maybe. I think that's a good. I think he's been very good as well when he's played. So,
yeah.
Then you're looking at attack. You're looking at the likes of Havertz. Wow, how exciting! Havertz, Mudryk, and Mount as well. But mate, there's so many players there that I'm just not excited by. I thought when the bid for Gallagher came in, I was like, come on, yeah, this is. I know as much as it might be an academy player, when you're getting 40 million plus 5 million add-ons for Gallagher, who, let's face it, are you going to get a much better offer than that for him? I think you should have took it, but obviously they didn't want to go. As for Jorginho, I know you guys said you were gutted he left, or you seen it was a bit disappointing considering the players we got left. I agree with that, but at the same time, I feel it makes more sense on the business side, whereas the guy's not going to be here in the summer, and he was not going to extend. And yeah, as past players have shown, when they go to Chelsea, when they go to Arsenal from Chelsea, Cech, Willian, David Luiz, who else? William Gallas, or whoever else you want to mention. Yeah, they don't work out, and I hope this is the case with Jorginho. Thank you for the time you had at Chelsea, but I hope he fails at Arsenal. I really do.
We all want him to fail, I think.
Yeah, hope he fails.
I don't think you're on your own there, Chris. But no, I'm looking forward to the game, and obviously, thank you very much for your input. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
What else? What else? Yeah, this thing about I think Benfica's hurt themselves here in terms of future, not future sales, because other clubs will obviously go. You see a quality player at Benfica, I'm pretty sure Chelsea will be back in for it. But I think Benfica's hurt themselves in the stance that even the new reports that are coming out today. Look, I know that Rui Costa was only acting on Benfica's half, but I'm sorry. I think that kind of says it all about the individual when he's willing to turn down 120 million just to keep a player who's going to go for less in the summer. I think when teams look at that, they'll say, mate, negotiations, do we really want to go in there and waste majority of the window because this guy will not want to have his ego hurt? I just think Benfica, they've got 120 million profit. They've got a massive amount of money from the sale. Obviously, money has to go to River Plate. Cool. At the same time,
it's 47 million though, Chris. I think that's one of the things with Benfica. I think River Plate have got 47 million from this deal. So I think Benfica have probably thought, well, we're only getting, a percentage of the fee anyway. But I do.
But then it goes to the summer though. They would have got less. So I know it's not ideal, but at the same time, River Plate added that clause, and obviously Benfica agreed to the clause. So I know it's not ideal, but in Benfica's case, I just think that the fact that they were willing to lose the amount of money they were going to make, the fee, the release clause, for the sake of keeping a player they didn't even want to be there. The guy didn't even want to go. So I just think it's a big mistake on their end. And why not bring the Champions League for the third time back to the bring on.
I'll tell you what, the last players we've signed from Benfica, they have worked out. Ramirez, Matic, David Luiz. So,
and I see it absolutely working for it. It's weird how when you look at a player and you think he's going to work out. I think with Enzo Fernandez, that's the case. I don't think it's going to flop. If he flops, I'll be massively shocked. Massive.
It's not like we haven't spent 100 million on a flop before, to be fair. Is it?
We're still on the books.
Yeah, exactly. So we definitely have done that before. But Chris, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining and tuning in and sticking in as well for the hour with us. But thanks
for having me, guys. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Chris. I think at the end, I think like we've said before, I think it is a massive gamble with Fernandez. I think I mean, we've got to give him time. I think I wouldn't want to assess Fernandez for another 12 months. I want to give him, the whole preseason at the start. I think not just him, a lot of these new signings, Malo Gusto is going to have to do exactly the same when he comes in the summer, but we have to give them time. The final question I do want to ask you as well, now that Graham Potter has been backed to an extent, let's be honest, we still haven't really addressed every area. We still need potentially an out number 9, which is what I think we need. But now he's been backed. Let's say we get pre-season, we're 5-6 games in. He's only won 2. What do we still back him? Do we still give him the time?
Yeah, I always said give him a transfer window, and then we'll start, having our opinions. And I think now it's the part where you start to think there's no more excuses. The pressure is on. Fans will start to be a lot more disappointed than they were should the results not go away. And I'm also really curious to see his game plan over 2 Champions League games. This is when you really start to see the elite managers, and those ones are separated from those that aren't, as maybe don't have those game plans ready. You've won in Germany 2-0. How do you play out the second game at Stamford Bridge? Yeah. And I think that's what Tuchel did so well in his Champions League winning campaign. And this is when we're going to start to think, is Potter the right man that we want long term if he doesn't have these game plans for these type of games?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you 100%. Which players can we use in Champions League? We spoke about that earlier. I can't remember what point, but we definitely spoke about it. But yeah, we've got a loophole, so we can register a lot of players under the category B section, under that threshold, and then I think we can utilize the 3 remaining spaces, and obviously the Jorginho space that was being occupied as well. So we should be good in terms of the Champions League. But Theo, as always, enjoyed tonight's game. I know you'll be there. It's actually cold, but it's actually about 12 degrees up here, which is it feels like a summer's day. It feels there's no central heating on or nothing, so it's actually a nice sort of day. But enjoy the game. We've both said 2-1, so hopefully we're right. I think Chris said 2-0. memory serves me correct. So hopefully one of us is right. As always, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, give this video a watch, share it with all your friends and everyone else as well. And as always, Theo, thank you very much for joining me. This has been episode 80 of From the Shed End. Until next time, stay safe and thank you very much.